You're shaking so violently your teeth chatter like macabre castanets. And the cold is no longer discomfort, it's a physical entity devouring you from the inside out. Your fingers lost color 20 minutes ago, transformed into pale sausages that barely obey commands from your brain. The wind cuts your skin like invisible razors, and each breath burns your lungs as if you're inhaling ground glass. You realize too late that the human body is just a pathetic biological furnace trying to maintain 98.6 degrees in a universe that would love to see you at absolute zero. Hypothermia isn't cinematic, it's silent, deceptive, and it's stealing your ability to think rationally while you read this. The real terror? You probably won't notice when you start dying. Your brain, that freezing meat computer, will start lying to you, whispering that taking off your clothes is a good idea, that sleeping in the snow seems cozy. Most people think dying from cold takes days, as if the universe were polite enough to warn you before turning you into a human popsicle. Brutal lie. Severe hypothermia can kill you in less than 3 hours under the right conditions. And death by exposure already begins in the first 30 minutes, when your core temperature drops below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. At this point, you enter mild hypothermia, shivering uncontrollably because your body desperately burns calories trying to generate heat. When you stop shivering, it's not because you've improved. It's because your body has given up the thermal war and is prioritizing vital organs over your disposable extremities. Your fingers, ears, and nose? Acceptable sacrifices on the altar of core survival. Temperature drops to 89 degrees and your heart starts beating irregularly, dangerous arrhythmias setting the stage for cardiac arrest. Below that, you enter stupor, complete mental confusion, uncoordinated movements like a drunken marionette. But there's a way to cheat freezing death, and it starts with understanding that you're not fighting cold, you're fighting relentless thermodynamic physics. Your body loses heat 4 ways: conduction when touching cold surfaces, convection when wind steals your heat, radiation when you simply radiate thermal energy into the void, and evaporation when sweat or moisture evaporates from your skin. Each of these pathways is a vampire thief drinking your heat, and you need to close all the faucets simultaneously. Most people make the fatal mistake of focusing on just one. Like wearing a thick coat but ignoring that they're sitting in wet snow conducting heat directly from their ass to frozen hell. You need a systemic, calculated, almost obsessive approach about every square inch of skin. Forget dignity, forget appearance, forget stupid pride that turns you into an ice statue. First step, insulate yourself from the ground before it sucks your heat like an insatiable thermal sponge. The ground conducts heat 25 times faster than air, meaning lying in snow is basically hugging a thermal vampire that never sleeps. You need an insulating barrier between you and the surface, and no, your thin jacket doesn't count. Dry branches, dead leaves, crumpled newspaper, cardboard, even plastic bags filled with air work as improvised insulating mattress. Stack at least 6 inches of material between you and the ground. Compact slightly, but not too much because air pockets are your thermal allies. If you have a backpack, empty everything and sit on top of it, because synthetic material generally insulates better than natural fabrics when wet. Don't have anything? Use your own clothes. Take off your jacket, sit on it folded, and wear another layer on top. Stingy with the coat? Maybe. Alive tomorrow morning? Definitely. Next step, transform your clothes into a multi-layer insulation system where trapped air does the heavy lifting, not the fabric. The secret isn't having a monstrous coat, it's having 5 thin layers creating pockets of dead air between them. Still air is exceptional insulation. Moving air is your silent assassin. Wear undershirt, long sleeve shirt, hoodie light jacket, then outer windbreaker coat. Each layer should be slightly loose, because compression crushes air pockets and destroys insulation. If you only have 2 pieces of clothing, stuff newspaper, dry leaves, or even grass between the layers, creating improvised insulation that works surprisingly well. Sound like a joke? Benjamin Franklin insulated entire houses with newspaper, and soldiers in trenches survived European winters stuffing uniforms with straw. Physics doesn't care if you look like a walking scarecrow, it only cares about thermal coefficient. Cover your head immediately, because this story about you lose 40% of heat through your head is an exaggerated myth, but you still lose proportionally more heat per area of unprotected surface. Your skull has abundant blood flow to feed the brain, meaning lots of heat being radiated to the ungrateful universe when uncovered. Use beanie, cap, hood, scarf wrapped like turban, Anything that covers ears and top of skull. Don't have anything appropriate? Improvise. Tie a t-shirt on your head, use plastic bag lined with fabric, or even cut sleeve from hoodie and wear it as crude but functional beanie. Protect neck too, because carotid arteries run there near the surface pumping warm blood that's happy to cool for the environment. Scarf wrapped 3 times or simply raise coat collar and secure with safety pin, clip, even plant thorn. Let's move on. Your extremities, those traitorous appendages, will be the first sacrificed by the body in survival mode. Fingers and toes are disposable from an evolutionary standpoint, so the body cuts circulation there to preserve vital organs in a process called peripheral vasoconstriction. Result? Fingers freeze, then necrotize, then fall off months later like morbid souvenirs of your frozen adventure. Solution: multiple layers of socks, starting with thin pair of wool or synthetic absorbing moisture, then thick insulating pair, then plastic bag over everything creating barrier against wind and snow. Sound weird? Professional mountaineers have used this technique for decades on K2 and Everest. For hands, same philosophy, thin gloves under thick gloves. Or better yet, mittens over gloves because mittens let fingers touch each other sharing body heat. No gloves? Shove hands into clean socks, stick them inside pockets, and keep them there until situation improves. Now comes the part many people ignore until they start feeling painful burning. Protect your face from the deadly combination of wind and cold known as wind chill. Wind at 30 miles per hour on a day of 14 degrees Fahrenheit creates wind chill of -4, enough to freeze exposed skin in 10 minutes. Your face, full of blood vessels and nerve endings, suffers first. Cover mouth and nose with scarf, bandana, or simply pull shirt collar over your face like improvised mask. Yes, you'll breathe moisture into the fabrics and they'll get damp. So alternate between 2 if possible, letting one dry close to body while using the other. Sunglasses or any eye protection prevent snow blindness, painful condition where corneas burn with UV reflection from snow. Don't have anything? Cut horizontal slit in cardboard or tree bark and tie on face like primitive but effective Eskimo goggles. Movement generates heat, but wrong movement kills you faster because sweating is death sentence in frozen environment. When you sweat, moisture soaks your clothes, destroying thermal insulation, and then evaporates, stealing precious thermal energy in a process that can dramatically lower core temperature. You need to find delicate balance between moving enough to generate metabolic heat, but not so much that you perspire. Do discrete isometric exercises, contract and relax thigh muscles, glutes, abdomen, holding tension for 5 seconds and releasing. This generates heat without visible movement that dissipates energy. If you need to walk, go slow and steady like determined tortoise and unbutton layers before starting to prevent overheating. Felt first drop of sweat on forehead? Stop immediately, ventilate clothes by opening zippers, let steam escape, then close everything and continue. Sound like obsessive micromanagement? That's exactly what it is, and it's the difference between hypothermia and homeostasis. Eat constantly because your body is a furnace that runs on caloric fuel, and a furnace without wood goes out sadly. Metabolizing food generates heat through a process called diet-induced thermogenesis, where your body literally burns calories to process nutrients. Fats and proteins are superior fuel, releasing 9 and 4 calories per gram respectively, while carbohydrates release quick energy but burn fast. Ideally, you want mix of both: chocolate, nuts, peanut butter, beef jerky, cheese, anything calorically dense. No provisions? Your own body has reserves. Adipose tissue can be metabolized. This process is too slow for immediate emergency. In that case, anything edible works. Inner bark of pine tree has calories. Lichens are technically edible, though they taste like divine punishment. Even frozen insects can be chewed for desperate protein. Disgusting? Absolutely. Effective? Marginally, but margins matter when death lurks. Hydration is cruel paradox of extreme cold. You need water, but melting snow costs precious calories, and eating snow directly lowers core temperature dangerously. Your body constantly loses moisture through respiration, especially in cold, dry air that acts like atmospheric desiccant. Dehydration thickens your blood, impairs circulation, and paradoxically makes you feel colder because thick blood doesn't distribute heat efficiently. If you have container, melt snow away from body using external heat if available. Or stick bottle filled with snow inside coat near chest where body heat gradually melts. Most efficient method? Eat snow in minuscule amounts, letting it melt in mouth before swallowing, minimizing thermal shock. Seems obvious, but desperate people swallow handfuls of snow directly and pay with sharp drop in internal temperature. One spoonful of snow at a time, melt, swallow, repeat. Slow and tedious? Yes. Safe? Also yes. Build improvised shelter even if you think rescue comes soon, because optimistic arrogance killed more people than wolves and bears combined. You need structure that cuts wind, retains body heat, and insulates you from frozen ground. Snow cave is classic option if you have deep snow. Dig horizontal hole in slope of snow mound, shallow tunnel with elevated chamber in back where warm air rises and gets trapped. Entrance should be lower than sleeping area to retain heat. Not enough snow? Piling dry branches against fallen tree creates basic A-frame structure. Cover with more branches, then leaves, then snow if available, creating multi-layer insulation. Interior should be tight, just enough space for you curled up, because smaller volume retains heat better. Leave small ventilation hole to avoid suffocation by carbon dioxide, but not big enough to bleed heat. Your ideal shelter is claustrophobic womb where you survive, not spacious suite where you freeze comfortably. Fire is obviously ideal, but depends on skill, dry materials, and motor coordination that hypothermia steals quickly. If your fingers are already numb and clumsy, focusing on lighting fire can waste precious time and energy better spent on passive insulation. Prioritize shelter and layers first, then try fire if conditions allow. If you try and fail repeatedly, stop before exhausting yourself completely and accept that survival without fire is possible, though miserable. Lighter, matches, flint should be an inner pocket, close to body where heat maintains functionality. Common BIC lighter fails below certain points, so warm it in hands or armpits before using. Ignition material? Birch bark, clothing lint, even rubber shavings from shoe sole can catch fire. Build small structure first, like tent of thin twigs over handful of flammable material, not ambitious bonfire that requires constant maintenance. Avoid alcohol completely despite seductive temptation to warm up inside, because physiology doesn't care about your illusions. Alcohol causes peripheral vasodilation, opening blood vessels in skin and extremities, creating deceptive sensation of warmth, while actually you're pumping warm blood to surface where heat escapes faster. Result? You feel warm for 15 minutes. Then core temperature plummets faster than before. Studies with shipwreck victims show those who drank to warm up died first from hypothermia. If you have alcoholic beverage, save it to use externally as disinfectant if injuries appear, or to trade for something useful if you encounter humans. Same logic applies to smoking. Seems like it warms but actually constricts peripheral blood vessels, impairing circulation exactly when you need it most. Recognize symptoms of hypothermia in yourself before cognitive impairment steals judgment capacity. Progressive stages. First, uncontrollable shivering and difficulty with fine motor tasks. Second, violent shivering and mental torpor where thinking gets slow like frozen molasses. Third, cessation of shivering, because body gave up in severe confusion with possible, paradoxical undressing where victims remove clothes believing they re-hot. If you notice you stop shivering and start feeling unexplained warmth, mental alarms should scream because you're in severe hypothermia. At this point, rewarming must be gradual and careful because raising temperature too fast can cause afterdrop. Phenomenon where cold blood from extremities returns to core and lowers heart temperature, causing fatal arrhythmia. Rewarm core first. Chest, neck, head, groin. Extremities come last because you need heart functioning before worrying about fingers. If you find another person with severe hypothermia, don't rub skin vigorously like movies teach, because this can break ice crystals formed in tissues and cause more damage. Also, don't give hot drinks if person is semi-conscious, because aspiration risk is high and burning esophagus with scalding liquid adds insult to injury. Instead, remove wet clothes gently, wrap in blankets or sleeping bags, and use your own body as heat source, if necessary through skin-to-skin contact. Yes, seems uncomfortable and intimate, but body-to-body heat transfer is empirically effective. Lie next to person, open your layers, press torsos together, recover both. Heat from armpits, chest, and groin transfers directly to victim. Embarrassing? Maybe. Life-saving? Provably. Modesty is luxury that frozen corpses don't enjoy. Signs of frostbite in tissues require different attention from general hypothermia, because you can die from cold with fingers technically alive, Or survive general cold but lose appendages to necrosis. Superficial frostbite leaves skin pale and hard, but tissue underneath still flexible when pressed. Deep frostbite transforms area into solid stone, pale or bluish, completely numb. Don't rub with snow like urban myth suggests, because ice crystals act like microscopic sandpaper destroying cells. Instead, rewarm area gradually with lukewarm water between 98 and 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Not hot because frozen tissue lost sensitivity and you can cause burns without noticing. Rewarming process hurts barbarically when circulation returns, sensation of hot needles piercing flesh from inside out. This pain is good news because it means nerve endings still work. No pain during rewarming? Likely tissue is necrotic and surgery will be necessary later. Stay mentally occupied because psychological isolation in hostile environment corrodes will to survive as effectively as cold corrodes flesh. Sing mentally, count patterns, solve idiotic math problems, recite song lyrics, anything that keeps frontal cortex engaged. Hypothermia causes progressive apathy where you simply stop caring, sitting in cold thinking, I'll just rest a minute before sleeping permanently. Fight this treacherous mental seduction. Establish small concrete goals. I'll improve shelter insulation. I'll organize supplies. I'll do 100 leg squats. Intentional movement generates heat and keeps mind sharp. If you start feeling creeping apathy, force yourself to move even without apparent will, because will only returns after you act, not before. You've reached point where survival is no longer theoretical. It's achievable through informed choices and disciplined execution. Extreme cold is a predictable enemy that operates under immutable laws of thermodynamics, not malevolent caprice of universe. Each calorie retained, each layer added, each inch of protected skin buys more time. Time for rescue to arrive, time for storm to pass, time for sun to rise bringing thermal relief. Human body is surprisingly resilient when managed correctly, capable of enduring extremes that seem impossible when you're comfortable reading this. People survive nights at minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit using principles you just learned, not because they were superhuman, but because systematically applied knowledge beats hostile physiology. Now you have operating manual for biological furnace in crisis. When cold bites, and it will bite, you won't have time to research, debate, or ask for second opinion. You'll only have quick decisions based on simple physics. Insulate from ground, trap air between layers, cover extremities, stay dry, eat fuel, build tiny shelter, and mainly refuse to accept you're a statistic waiting to happen. Cold doesn't negotiate, but you don't need to either. You have unfair advantage called applied knowledge, and an environment where most die from ignorance. Thermal education is literally difference between dawning as survivor or being found months later when snow melts. Respect the cold, prepare obsessively, and when inevitable encounter happens, fight like your life depends on it. Because it does.